Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the privilege and the honor of interviewing Anthony Iannarino. Anthony is a top sales coach, an international speaker, 3 times best-selling author. His 4th book is coming out April 19th. It's called Elite Sales Strategies. He's the co-founder of the Outbound Conference. He's also the publisher of a fantastic blog, thesalesblog.com, where he posts daily, if you can believe that. So Anthony's books include The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, which came out in 2016, The Lost Art of Closing, 2017, Eat Their Lunch, which is a particular favorite of mine, 2018, and now Elite Sales Strategies, like I said, will come out April 19th. It is such a privilege. I want to welcome Anthony Iannarino. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Before we start, I'd like to take a quick moment to address something for those watching this interview who may be wondering, why does a B2B marketer like me care about selling and sales methodologies and things like that? Why would I care so much about Anthony and his content, his books? And I want to address that at the top. The techniques involved in sales for things like gaining buyer attention, understanding their challenges, value creation, addressing objections, even positioning, and so on, are all also common in marketing. I find it essential to study some of the best sellers that I can find. With that said, Anthony, shall we jump in?
I'm ready when you are.
My first question for you is just, it takes a lot of effort to document a framework and a methodology, to author and promote a book. Can you tell us what compels you to do this?
I don't know that anybody really knows what compels them. I mean, you have something in here, or in here, or both, hopefully both, like head and heart, like you have it there, and maybe you have it in the gut even. I guess the way I'll describe this is a friend of mine, his name is Howard Bloom, and Howard is a scientist. And he wrote one of my favorite books, The Lucifer Principle, a scientific expedition into the forces of history. But before Howard got chronic fatigue syndrome, he was the biggest publicist in music. So you would know his clients, Joan Jett, John Cougar, ZZ Top, AC/DC, Aerosmith, and the list goes on and on and on to just about anybody. And one time when I was asking Howard to talk about that part of his life and what he did, like he forced John Cougar Mellencamp on a group of people that didn't want anything to do with John Cougar Mellencamp, and that's what started his career. But the one story that he told me, he forced ABC to sign Prince. They didn't want Prince. They had no interest in Prince, and Bloom forced them to assign Prince. Turned out well for everybody involved. But he told me Prince doesn't dance; he's being danced. Like there's something that's coming through him, and that's what it is. There's something in there that's just coming out. And I think for a lot of us, like I can't not write. So people are like, well, how do you write every day? Like, how do you not write every day? Like I write every day because that's how I'm being danced. Like that's the thing that happens to come through me.
So tell me about the sales profession itself then. What made you dedicate yourself to that?
I didn't want to. I mean, I never had any real interest in sales. It was not something that I would consider. Like I thought salespeople were smarmy, manipulative, self-oriented, pushy, not nice to be around, only interested in money. And I ended up in LA playing music, and I had a manager who realized that I had won more accounts than his 3 salespeople. And he came to me and he asked me, like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, well, it's not really that hard. You call people and you ask them for a meeting. Some of them say yes. And then you get in your car and you drive out and you have a nice chat with them, and they talk to you about their problems, and you tell them how you can help. And then you just send them a contract and you start taking their business. And he said, that's beautiful what you said. Like, I want you to cut your hair At the time, my hair was about waist length at that time. So I was playing rock and roll. And he said, I want you to go into outside sales. And I was like, no possible way, no possible way at all. And he forced me into it. And then once I was outside, I'm like, I enjoy this part of helping the client way more than filling their orders. I mean, I just had such a better experience having those conversations. I'm like, why would I ever go back into that? Like when I'm so much more happy doing this other thing where I'm making a difference for other people's businesses in a more, I'm going to say in a more strategic and a more useful way than I was before. And so then after that, it was pretty easy for me to decide that I can continue to do this. After I had a brain surgery, I had to move back to Columbus, and I wasn't allowed to drive for 2 years. So I went back into the family business. You can't live in LA and not have a car. LA is a car city.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a different thing. So Columbus was good, and that's when I started growing a business.
What are the qualities then that make someone the best at their craft, the best in their field?
There's a couple. I'm going to give you the two that I think are probably the most relevant. So number one, the best in their business, like whatever level that is the person who is uh got what the Zen Buddhists would call beginner's mind. Like they don't know anything. So no matter, like if you go to an Aikido school or a jujitsu school, like anybody who's a 6th-degree black belt will tell you that they're still learning. They're trying to figure it out. Like they're still trying to figure it out, even though from our view, they're masters, right? You're a master, but they're like, no, there's like a whole bunch of areas where I could be better. And they just continue to seek. The second thing I would say for somebody to do that is they're hungry. Like there's something inside them that says there's still something available to me that I don't have yet. And I want to pursue that. And I think those are the two criteria. I mean, curiosity is good too. There's a number of other things that you could throw in there. But for me, the beginner's mind and just realizing like, no matter how much you know almost nothing. And then like, what else can you learn?
That answer is a great transition into my next question. I'd love to talk more about your latest book, Elite Sales Strategies. You have this concept of one up and value creation, bringing value to your buyer. Can you just tell us a little bit about, give us an overview of the focus of your latest book?
Yeah, so this book is the fourth of four that are really my documentation of a modern sales approach. So the approaches have changed because buyers have changed. And so that's probably the primary thing that's gone on is the change in how buyers need different help than they needed in the past. So because that's true, we've had to adjust. But one of the things that happens is in our world, especially because of internet marketing, there's so much available in the way of information. What happened a long time ago, and I paid more attention to these things than a lot of other people do, but there was a lot of conversation about now there's information parity. Like your client knows everything that you know. And it's like, not so much. Uh, I was looking at, I have a dilated ascending aorta. Not a big problem for me. Not a big problem. Just don't deadlift anymore. That's what my cardiologist told me. Like, don't lift anything heavy that would cause you to hold your breath. And as I was looking, I watched a surgery. It's a very simple surgery. You open up the chest, you cut off right above the heart. You take that piece out and you replace it with a plastic type of plastic thing that actually will make sure that you don't have a rupture. It's simple. You and I could do it, except there's no possible way we could do that. Like you have no idea how to open up the chest. There's so many things, but we think that decision making for some reason for a client is reading about your company on a website. And so there is parity when it comes to the salesperson that wants to come in and say, let me tell you about my company. Let me tell you about what we do and all of these things. They already know that. They've already looked at you. They've looked at your website. They've seen you on LinkedIn. Like that's not useful to them. What they're trying to do is to make the right decision for their business. And they're trying to get a better result than the results that they're getting now. And the help that they need is understanding how to make that decision. So here's my argument for one up. The person who is one up in a conversation, and I'll say in this conversation that you and I are having, I'm one up when it comes to sales. You're one up when it comes to marketing. I'm not a marketer. I market, but I'm not a marketer. That's not my profession. My profession is sales. And so you're going to be one down when we're talking about sales. I'm going to be one down when we talk about marketing. This is the same dynamic that happens with a client. I help people get a certain result every single day of my life. I've done it for years. I'm helping people. I have so much situational knowledge, that kind of experience that you get where you can go like, oh, Aaron, we really want to do this thing that looks kind of like this thing that we saw. And you're like, that won't work for you because this isn't true for you. And they're like, oh, but now you have to say, well, this is true for you. So you need to message this in a different way because it's not the same thing. Even though you like this and you found something that you want to model, it's not going to give you the same result as them because of this. Now, how do you know that? Because some part of your subconscious mind goes like, no, that pattern's out of order. Like it doesn't work the way that they're looking at it. You don't know how you know it. You just know it. And so that's what happens.
It
Now, the
reminds me,
person,
sorry,
go ahead.
it reminds me in my field where you walk into the customer or companies and they're trying to get a sense of who they are. And they want to be, everybody wants to be a customer oriented company, but you can clearly see they're a product company and they're
Yeah.
built like a product company and they're led by technologists and product people, but yet
Yeah.
they want to be a customer company. And I'm saying, no, be a product company. It's okay.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
that's what you are, be that and be good at it.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting across from somebody who doesn't have my experience, to get them out of one down, I have to transfer my knowledge and experience to them so that they can now make a better decision because they have insights and information that was unavailable to them until we had the conversation. Now, at the same time, they can say, this is how things work in our company. Now they're giving me this information. And this is some of the things that we're seeing in our industry right now. And it's showing up different than you described it. And now I'm becoming less one down over that period of time that we're talking together. So the idea is if you are in sales, or I would argue in marketing, your job is to lead the client and make sure that they really understand the decision that they're making and the outcomes that they can expect. Because if you let them go to the website and make a decision, they're missing a lot of the information to know why I would say this instead of that. And you can only get that from somebody who has the experience. So I had a brain surgery. I'm sure there were a lot of people who would like to have done my brain surgery. My doctor, too, in Cincinnati, uh, billed me $80,000 for the surgery. So he did two at the same time. So that was a good day for him. And the people at UCLA who wanted to do the surgery were young and aggressive and scared me off because they were more interested in what it was going to do for them than what it was going to do for me. So they were self-oriented. They're like, we need to get you on video. We need to be able to train people. In the future, we're going to have a lot of people in this surgery center with you, so we can train them while we're doing this. And I'm like, I need to call my parents and let them know I've been in the hospital for 2 days before we do anything. And Dr. Two was 100% one up. Like he was 100% of 100% more one up than anybody I've ever met. But there's a couple other things I would add to your list from earlier. Like it's not visual and it's not audio and it's not the internet and it's not magazines and it's not television. It's psychology. And so the intersection between sales and marketing is right there on this line of the psychology of the conversation that you're having. And what I would argue is that the reason that those of us who have sold for a very long time are very good at it is because we have the pattern recognition around the psychology of the person sitting across from us. Now you have a different problem to solve. So you're saying like, I have to communicate one to many. And so I have to understand a different type of psychology. And if you would read something like Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz or something like that, and you understand that there's no such thing as demand generation, the demand already exists, and all you can do is speak to the demands that are already there if you want to be a good marketer. Like, that's it. They already know what they want. They need everything. They need everything. Now, not all of them at the same time, but they need to be happier. They need to be healthier. They want more money. They want better relationships. They want all these things. Like, those things are all built into humans. You can't manufacture it because it's already there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. It's immutable, and you're never going to be able to satisfy what people want. So it's easier, I would say, from a salesperson's perspective, 1-to-1, like, you can figure that out. 1 to 27,000, that's a different problem to solve. So what levers do you pull across a large group of people? And so we start going personas. You probably have seen this on LinkedIn. My favorite thing was 2 people that basically have the same buyer persona. They're both rich and famous. They both live in castles. They both have been divorced, and one of them is Prince Charles, and the other one's Ozzy Osbourne. Like, they're like they're in the same persona, same age, everything's the same, except they're wildly different human beings, right?
Mhm. You write field guides, you write playbooks, you write frameworks. How have you avoided getting hypothetical and theoretical with your content? Sometimes as authors go on, they get more and more sort of big picture theoretical, disconnected, but your stuff just seems to stay connected and relevant. How do you do that?
What you try to do is you try to take some concept or some theory, and then you hopefully have executed it yourself. So a lot of what I write is what I know as a salesperson, things that I learned and things that I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to figure out how to teach people some of the things that they struggle with, like my ability not to need a product or a service or a solution to sell. Like, I don't need any of those things to sell, mostly because I sold in a commoditized industry where everything was the same. Like, you don't have any advantage that you can speak to except for the conversation that you're in with the buyer. So I keep trying to find better ways to teach people, like, the part of the conversation that's valuable to you is the part where you get to talk about your company so you can get the credibility at the beginning of that conversation. You can never be credible or relevant if you have to point at something else to suggest that you're relevant. Like, my company's a good company. Like, yeah, but what about you? Like, you're sitting in front of me. You have to be the one that creates the value for me, because there's nobody else from your company in here. Like, it's just the 2 of us. So that's it. But for me, for a framework, if there's not action, like, if there's not a way to tell somebody how to go do this, like even level 4 and Eat Their Lunch, which you said that you like that book. When I taught people to turn it around, like, start with the strategic outcome. So this is the Theodore Levitt idea of people don't buy drills, they buy holes. And why would you talk about the drill when you could talk about the hole? I mean, so you don't talk about the drill. The drill's just the way to get the hole, but they just want the hole. If they could have the hole and not have the drill, they just take the hole. That would be fine with them. Like, if there's a way to get the hole without having to buy the drill, I would do that. So the only reason to buy that, and I think what salespeople get wrong, and maybe marketers do too, is they spend a lot of time talking about the drill, and they think that it's the drill that is what turns people on and causes them to buy. And then maybe in some cases it does, especially around technology stuff like an iPhone or something, because that's one of those things that captures your imagination, especially because of the way that Jobs presented it originally. But Ken Wilber taught me about map making. And the thing about map making is you want to use all of the necessary components without having too many or anything that's external. So you try to boil it down. There's 4 levels of value. You can either start from the commoditized side, or you can start from the strategic outcome side. And if you start from the strategic outcome with decision makers, they're a lot happier, because they're like, great, we're talking about a whole. How do I get greater market share? How do I get better customer engagement. Like, how do I get new clients? How do I grow those clients? Like, that's the stuff that they're interested in. And then you go, well, I got technology that'll do that. Like, if you start with, like, I have some technology that will allow you to communicate with your your customers. Yeah, we already have that. Yeah. So like you're starting from the wrong end, and unless you figure out, like, go the other way.
In terms of methodologies, do methodologies have a shelf life? I'm thinking of challenger selling, Sandler. I went to I got trained in Sandler. Again, I'm telling you, I respect sales. I always have from the beginning of my career, and thought it was very useful to go into and understand sales methodologies, spin selling, snap selling, all of these types of methodologies. Do they have a shelf life?
They have to have a shelf life. So if you go back to Sandler was started the year I was born. Okay. So I'm like 17, 18 years old now by now, somewhere like that, like, or maybe slightly older than that. Um, I'm 54. That framework, that methodology is the same age that I am. And so how could it hold its relevance when everything changed over 54 years, like 54 years of change? So it's very hard for anything, especially something like Sandler, which I would call fear-based. It's fear-based. Like, don't tell them anything about pricing because they have to go through discovery. And don't drop your candy on the lobby floor. Well, like, well, that means don't do free consulting. The
Yeah.
internet is all free consulting. Like, you can go find anything. Like, and if you don't want to play that game, don't play it, but you're going to lose tremendously to people who do play that game. So you look at that and you go, well, what's changed? Information parity. Like, there was massive information disparity at that time because there's no internet. Like, where are you going to find anything? You can't find anything. You're going to go to the library and start studying? No, you're not. You're going to wait till a salesperson comes in and starts talking to you. And you need that salesperson to tell you about their company, to tell you about their products, to tell you about the successes that they're having. Because where are you going to see it? There wasn't any place. Now it's everywhere. So those kinds of tectonic shifts in the market means that something has to change. Now, there's a lot of people right now who are unhappy that solution selling is now starting to wane. And why is it starting to wane? Because two salespeople come in to talk to you. The first one says, here's what our company is. Let me tell you about us. Let me tell you about our solutions. Let me tell you about our logos. And then 2 days later, another solution seller comes in and they do the exact same thing. And then you go, Aaron, what was the difference between salesperson A and salesperson B? And you're like, well, A was taller and had lighter hair, and B had a green logo that was the same color as my carpet when I grew up. And that's the only difference that they can tell, and it's not serving them. So the reason that buyers are unhappy with salespeople and don't think that we create enough value is because the conversation's not a good conversation. It's not a conversation about decision making and getting better results. The conversation starts with why us, and then what's keeping you up at night. And that's what salespeople were taught to do for, let's call it 35 years. And it worked wonderfully. I did it. And I stopped doing it when I found a better way. And in my better way, I figured out in about 2001, when I realized that nobody cared. And I had two experiences very close together. One where I taught the client how to think about their business, and that worked beautifully for me. They sent me $2 million later that afternoon after I did that. And then I was like, that worked really well. I wasn't, the 2 million wasn't for me. It was for their temporary employees. So I passed it off. That's what I needed them to do. And then I went to Cincinnati to have a big client meeting. And I walked in and I sat down across from a guy, and he said, I reached over to grab my laptop so I could show him our Why Us. It was a Why Us presentation. And he said, put the laptop back in your bag. And I'm like, yeah, but I got a presentation here that I want to show you. And he goes, I don't want to see your presentation. I've seen too many presentations. I'm going to ask you questions and you answer the questions. And if that goes well, we'll have a conversation about doing business together. And I'm like, a lot of the questions that you're going to ask are in that laptop with really nice graphics that's going to explain it better than I can explain it. And he goes,
Marketing worked really hard on that.
yeah, no kidding. It's beautiful. And like he had no interest. And a couple of days later, a friend of mine called and he said, I walked into the conference room and I plugged my laptop into their projector. And the senior decision maker said, if you open that laptop, I will throw your ass out of here. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what's going on in this world? Like, they don't want it anymore. And they haven't wanted that for a long time. And I think that all of these things are going to have an expiration because things keep changing. And I will tell you, the arc for sales goes like this. And I think it's going to go this way for marketing too. Either you are capable of creating strategic level value for me, like strategic level, not just transactional. Anybody can do transactional marketing. You need an image, you need it to go on Facebook, you need to boost that. I get it. That's transactional. The part that you started talking about at the beginning about marketing, the where all of this is going is to higher and higher value creation. And so the strategic part, the part where you think about what it means. So when you were talking about Andy, right? So when you start thinking like it's not the product, as good as the iPhone is, it's not the product, it's what does the product mean? What does it say about the person? Why did Jobs have white? Nobody had white headphone cords. Nobody. Why? Because it says, this is my identity. This is the identity now. I'm wearing the identity. And other people then started going, we need to make red ones then, because we have to have something that sets us apart. And so that's the kind of thing that you have to think about. But I would say in both cases, whether it's sales or marketing, it's all moving towards greater and greater value. And the people that can't do that are going to find themselves in a different situation. Like it's going to be very hard to sell like it's 1967, when it's 2022 and there's so much uncertainty. And if I ask you, what is this going to cost, Aaron? And you're like, well, I can't tell you. I mean, then it's like, are you ashamed of your pricing? Like it's already so high, you can't even say the words, and that kind of thing. And if you just say, based on what I know about you, Anthony, like it's going to be somewhere between $45,000 and $72,000 probably to get started. And if I go like, Aaron, like I could never afford that. Well, guess what? I cannot afford it. So what are you going to do anyway? Like, no, I still want to go through discovery with you. It doesn't matter. Like the client has lots of choices. There's never been more in your world, in my world. There's plenty of sales organizations. There's plenty of marketers. And if you don't want to help me get the answers that I need, I'll find somebody else. And that's why these things that have worked for as long as they have don't work anymore, because the environment's so uncertain. We live in disruptive, accelerating, constant change, and people need different kinds of help than they needed in the past.
Your books focus so well on value creation. And like you said, it's so important. It's everything right now in both sales and marketing. But you also talk about personal values, and I appreciate that. And can you just tell us a little bit about why are values critical in the sales profession in particular?
I think values are critical in every human endeavor, I mean, regardless of what it is. And I also think that if you're going to do anything meaningful while you're here, you have to decide what your values are. Now, they don't have to be my values, but if you're going into the market to try to identify a group of people, then you have to speak, in my opinion, to their identity. And part of that identity is values. And the reason we have so much political strife right now in the United States is that we have two warring narratives that have split people into two tribes that believe that the other tribe is their enemy. And that's pulling like the easiest lever for politicians to pull is to just say, there's the enemy. And we'll go back to Howard Bloom, who once told me politics is permission to hate. That's what politics is. It's permission to hate. And that's not a good thing for a country to have that going on. But you do have to go out and speak to people's values, and people have different values. And the ones that are going to be right for you are the ones that share some part of your values with you, or something important and meaningful, the same way that you do. That's why not everybody's a fit for somebody else. And so one group is the Apple group, or the other group is the Galaxy group, or the Samsung group. And there's other people who are like, I still like LG, and like that they belong to that tribe. I think your values matter a great deal. You're here for 4,108 weeks on average. Hopefully you do a lot better than that, Aaron. I had a grandmother that made it to 93, so I'm hoping I got plenty of her genes, to get an extension on the average, which is just about 79 years old. Your values are what you should probably lead with, and if you care about what you do, then you have to bring your values and your principles into it.
You teach salespeople to position themselves as trusted advisors. Um, Getting to know your clients typically means spending time with them. So,
Mhm.
how important is it for salespeople and marketers really to specialize in one type of problem, audience, or industry? Because I have seen, a lot of, especially the last 10 years, people moving around a lot, changing industries, changing positions, changing. How important is it for you to really focus on one type of problem, audience, or industry?
I think it depends on your nature. Like if you're incredibly curious and you're always reading and you're always trying to like pull on the thread, and you pull the thread and then you're like, oh, now I got to read this book. And then that made me read this book. And now I had to read this book. And now I had this conversation with this person. If you're one of those people, it's kind of easy to go wide. I think for many of us, if you get the fundamentals, like if you really are good at the fundamentals, like you be good at the fundamentals of marketing, like you're really good at that, you're going to be able to figure out the things that you can still do for people in industries that you haven't been. And in fact, a lot of the value comes from taking something that hasn't been done in an industry and then do it in that industry and change the game for people. So I do think that there's something to be said for having enough time and enough experience in one role, that you know it well enough that you can be an expert. To be a trusted advisor, though, you have to be the one that has so much inside you that you're telling the client what they need to do. And that's what we do in sales. We tell them these are the things that you need to do. Generally, the person, and you have to do that in marketing, it's the same thing. Um, it's the counsel. Like, what do you know that I don't know? The one up position here. What do you know that I don't know? What advice would you give me? Because if they take your advice, like you made the decision for them, good or bad, you made the decision for them. And so as you get older, your hair is dark right now, but it won't always be. And at some point, it'll change colors on you. You'll realize like my values and my willingness to give advice changes. So if you ask me like, what's the most important thing for me as I think about transforming my sales force, you have to train your managers first. Like if you don't change your managers, don't do it at all. Like that's it. I'll give you that advice. You want to do it and you want to do it without doing that. I'm not the guy for you. I'm not the guy. I'm going to self-select out as early as I can because it's already broken. It's already done. There's nothing I can do to help you. If you don't have the people responsible for the behavioral changes involved in this, there's no reason to give me any of your money. Give it to somebody else if you want to, but you're still going to have the same problem at the end and you're going to have to redo this and spend more money in the future. And I'm okay with that. But if you want to do it, then I'm going to ask you to do it the way that I know is going to give you success, even if you don't like it. And even if you have to spend more money, it is what it is.
How do you feel about the breakup of sales roles into sales development reps, business development reps, account execs, sales engineers, account managers? Because you're talking about building relationships and creating value, but then you're potentially passing people along to a number of different people during the sales process sometimes. So give me your take on, what is the impact of all of these different positions and handoffs on relationship management and value creation?
This is all the Silicon Valley ethos that now permeates business in the United States, especially the kind of companies that do what you just described. in the turn of the not last century, 2 centuries ago, Frederick Winslow Taylor went to Ford and explained that he could get many more cars off of a line if everybody was responsible for just turning one thing, right? That's it. And then it's a conveyor belt. That's a car. So that's not a human being. Like, you don't put a human being on the conveyor belt and have people, twist and turn things as they go down. That's not how humans work. Um, the slicing thinner and thinner and thinner slices, and to say that all these people are a specialist in one particular thing is harmful to the development of salespeople. So the SDR or the BDR, who's mostly making cold calls, is going to get really good at getting a meeting. And then when they go to that meeting and they're not an SDR, they don't know how to have a meeting. Like, they don't know how to create value in that first interaction. And it's because they hand it off to an AE, and the AE handles that conversation. Now, because they're not there sitting next to that person, learning that conversation and getting a chance to pursue that on their own, their growth is getting tremendously stunted by people who are selfish and who don't think about anything other than, like, we need to get our revenue up so we can flip this thing and become rich and not have to do any work anymore, except maybe just become a VC or something. I mean, that's the way that they think about this thing. But they're all being harmed. AEs that are being taught, that they don't have to prospect, are now having a bunch of people looking at them as a model, going like, I can't wait till I don't have to prospect anymore. And then they're going to go get into companies, and companies are going to go like, what are you doing sitting there? And they're like, I'm waiting for somebody to give me my leads and my meetings. Like, we don't do that here. Like, you have to pick up the phone and call people, and then they're stunned. Like, I don't have the experience to do this. Right. Because we didn't let them do it. I do think that there are good reasons to have different roles. Customer success manager makes total sense, those kinds of things. But the more you keep slicing it down, the more jarring it is for the client to go like, I was working with Aaron, now I'm working with Anthony, and now I'm working with Susan. Like, I don't know who do I talk to about these things and how that works. And it's not good for the customer experience at all.
In terms of the relationship between marketing and sales, I want to get into that a little bit. Can you tell me, what does the ideal partnership from your perspective between marketing and sales look like?
Marketing has to change dramatically, and has not. I only know a couple companies that I could point at that actually get this and understand it and execute it well. Marketing is why us, why our product. That's what it is. It's why us. It's why our product. It is not why change. It's not why change. It should be why change, but it's not. It's mostly about drawing attention to something. But the thing that salespeople need from marketing that they don't get is content that speaks to why change. And why change is the first part of the decision that a client has to make. And so when you try to wait and leave that until it's later on, like, let them show you what our product looks like. And we're back to the drill. And you're like, yeah, but my drill's yellow and it's really big. It looks like it belongs on a construction site. Like, imagine how powerful this thing is. And the person's like, I just need a hole. I can probably just use the nail if I need to. They just, that's not what they're looking for. So the part where you need to help salespeople is helping them understand, why should the client change? Why should they change? Because these factors and these forces are now weighing on their business. They're unable to get the result that they used to. They need somebody to explain it to them. And marketing needs to pick that role up for salespeople and make sure that they have good content for that part of the conversation that's generally missing. And it's generally missing because what we talked about earlier, the legacy approach doesn't believe that uncertainty is a problem and it causes people not to buy. They don't know why they need to change until a salesperson comes. And my strong opinion, which shows up in elite sales strategies, is that it's negligent not to go and help people before they get hurt. So the trusted advisor's like, hey, Aaron, you really messed that up, bro. Like, that's a huge problem that you created. You shouldn't have done it that way. And you're like, well, where were you before I did this? It would have been nice for you to come and tell me, like, don't botch this up. Here's what you need to do. And then I wouldn't have botched it up and I wouldn't have to spend more money doing this. So salespeople have to be proactive. And I would argue that it would be really helpful if a lot of what marketing did was really about why change, without just saying, we understand your problem, but we understand why your problem is your problem, how it became your problem, what you need to think about to get rid of this problem, and having a different conversation than what's keeping you up at night.
My next couple of questions actually come from my LinkedIn community. I like this part of the conversation. I've put out there that I was going to have this conversation with you, be interviewing you. So I asked them what they wanted to know. I didn't want to completely be selfish today. So the first one came from Bridget Scott. She asked, without the ability to meet clients in person, I guess she's referring to COVID in particular and the effects of that. How have you been able to cultivate and maintain client relationships via email, text, and Zoom?
Text, yes. Email, no. Zoom, possibly. Yeah, possibly. I like Zoom when you're separated by distance. It's better. Like what we're doing right now is better than a phone call.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a lot of phone calls. One of the things that you discover about decision makers is that when they travel and they're in their car, they have windshield time. And if you want to have a relationship with them, ask them exactly when they have windshield time. Just ask them, say, what time, when do you have windshield time that I could get on your calendar? And you'll find out you're going to get a much longer conversation. Like if they have a 40-minute commute, like you're going to get 45 minutes out of them, and they're going to talk to you the whole time. I do think though, if and when you can go back to being face to face with human beings, there's nothing more powerful than that. So showing up and having a presence is a total domination mode. Like that's like, I'm going to go and win this. In March of 2021, Jamie Dimon went on CNBC and was interviewed. And he said, I canceled all my Zoom meetings. I'm not doing it anymore. It's a waste of time. And we just talked to all of the clients that we lost to competitors. And we asked them personally, Jamie Dimon asked, these are big deals, not little deals. Jamie Dimon made $35 million last year as a reference point. So he asked the clients, why did you go with our competitor? And they said, they showed up in our office and you didn't. And he said, that will never happen again. That will never, ever happen again. Presence is a competitive advantage. So if your competitors want to stay on Zoom, let them, but you go out and get in front of people and do the best you can to have the greatest presence, because that's one of the best things you can do.
We're all grateful, marketers and sellers, that events are starting to come back. I know your outbound conference is happening in the fall. I think it's September.
Yeah.
Tremendous conference, but just getting face to face again. I think so many of us who were stuck in our homes for a couple of years and behind screens are just so excited to get back out there and talk to people and use all of our senses again. And so yeah. Next question, Todd Walcott asked, some organizations make it a practice to regularly rotate the territories of their salespeople in order to keep control of accounts and engender loyalty with the company. Is this wise in the long run?
I've never done that. So I don't know if it's wise or not. So I can't comment on something I don't have any experience with, but my gut tells me whatever you're afraid of, and when it has that kind of power over you that you think that this person's got a better relationship than we do, it might be interesting to recognize that that person is the representation of your company, and swapping them out with somebody that they are super comfortable with that creates value for them may not be the best thing to do. And if you're worried about the client or the person leaving and taking the client with you, you probably already have a problem. Like, so I don't know, like all of the fears that cause people to do things like that are things that I think are super negative. And I don't think you should operate from fear. I mean, I don't think so, unless it's the fear that's driving you to try to create greater value or something like that, something positive. but all these negative things like that, from sales approaches that are fear-based, you know, and I have the ability to give people fear too when I explain, like, go in and do an executive briefing at the beginning of the call instead of talking about your company. And they're like, I can't do that. And they're a little bit afraid. And then when I show them what it looks like, they're like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. And that's it. So I don't know. I don't think that's a great practice. Give them the person that they need. And if that's the person that they need, and that person's going to be able to grow that company and grow their results and your results, don't be so afraid.
Thank you for taking the time to answer these questions, Anthony. Before we go, I just wanted to add for the audience. So for me, every Sunday morning, I get the most insightful email from this guy. He sends me this email in Sunday mornings that makes me think. I read it every Sunday, and it always spurs thought. It challenges me. So if you guys, if you happen not to be a subscriber of Anthony's weekly email, I highly recommend that you sign up. It's free, of course. It's on thesalesblog.com. So everyone, please go and do that. You'll thank me later. But again, thank you so much, Anthony, for the time. I appreciate you answering the questions today.
Thanks so much for having me. Good
Yeah.
to see you face to face, even if it is Zoom.
Ah, yes, absolutely.